Hi there, I'm Dawn of the World, and what an amazing chapter that I'll be shining a light on today. There is so much to cover, so let's just dive on in. This chapter picks up where the last one left off, Kid and Law having landed a powerful attack on Big Mom, or as a recent commenter dubbed her, Big Meme, by means of Kid having awakened his fruit abilities. I gotta say that Kid is not messing around. Awakening is something that not a lot of fruit users achieve. This has me wondering whether or not Luffy has awakened his fruit yet and we just haven't seen it. Much like back in Enies lobby, he had unlocked his second and third gears before we got to see them. But on the other hand, maybe Kid is slightly further ahead, slightly more advanced than Luffy in this particular area. Just like during his introduction, he was slightly more advanced than Luffy in terms of bounty. And as many of us predicted, his and Law's attack on Big Meme has succeeded in making her mad, really mad, nightmare fuel mad. She's big mad now. Just look at the font that's used for her dialogue. I mean, Kid wasn't messing around and Big Mad ain't messing around either. And this new form of hers would have to be one of the most powerful beings we've seen in the series so far. Well, she already is one of the most powerful beings we've ever seen in the series, but now her power is compounded even more. She is absolutely terrifying, the biggest and motherliest we've ever seen her. I don't think the name Big Mom is enough anymore to truly encapsulate this behemoth she's become. She feels more like some kind of colossal matriarch. She's the size of a giant now, like foreshadowing for Elbaf next arc. I just really want to see Elbaf. The fact she's gone as far as taking a year of her own lifespan goes to show she's definitely taking Kid and Law very seriously and is acknowledging their future potential to stand where she stands. Also, I don't really watch the anime so much anymore, but what I really hope they do here when Colossal Matriarch speaks is to have her speak with the compounded voices of all of the souls that she's absorbed. I think they did something similar with Moria or Shadow Luffy back in the Thriller Bark arc, but I can't be bothered checking right now. Like, I imagine her own voice being the dominant voice, but the other multiple voices being in there too. Like, you know what I mean? Because, you know, why not? Why not make her more terrifying than she already is? The way she says, "It's been decades since I felt pain like this," raises a few questions in and of itself, but makes me think perhaps the last time she took on this form could have been during the incident at God Valley 40 years ago. Anyway, Drake isn't joining Apu, which is good because I want him to be friends with Luffy. It also makes a lot of sense, and it does show Drake's sense of honor because Luffy helped him when he was in a really tight spot back all of those chapters ago, and Luffy is also a friend of a friend for Drake. I can't see Drake turning on Luffy, and he even says something along these lines himself. He's a good dude, he's a good person, and I'm rooting for him. Apu is honestly a bit of a mess. I guess you could say he's really playing it by ear, which makes some sense because that's what his abilities are like. I also really liked Yamato and Drake's brief confrontation before realizing they're still on the same side, since they're both now opposing Kaido and fighting alongside Luffy. Like, they came that close to having an actual fight before Drake was like, hey, we're good, and Yamato was like, we're good, and they just... And it seems like that theory about the numbers having come from the samurai looks as though it's got some merit. They're even in Iwato Chamber, which has the same namesake as the cave. So now we have Yamato running off, trying to prevent this explosion from happening. We have Fuga, the number, chasing after Yamato. We then have Apu and the other two numbers chasing after Fuga and Yamato. And we have Drake chasing after Apu. It's pretty comical. And then, of course, we have one of the many things I've been looking forward to, and that is the CP0 finally making their move. But I think I'm gonna do a separate video on that because I've just got too many thoughts, but I'll give you some of those thoughts now. So Robin and Brook officially realize that the CP0 are present and that they're here for Robin. The Minks are trying to hold them off, but I don't know how long this will work. The thing that particularly struck me was when Robin said that the CP0 agents with the masks were in a class all of their own, because Rob Lucci and Kaku are both a part of CP0, but they don't wear masks, so it means that these guys are probably a lot more powerful than Kaku or Lucci, which I guess makes some sense at this point in the story. I found it interesting that despite this, Lucci is still giving them orders, but I guess that kind of mirrors the CP9 saga when Spander was so much weaker than the rest of the CP9, but he was the one giving them orders. Is Rob Lucci like the Spander of CP0? That's that's just weird. And I'm also wondering if there's anybody we know behind those masks, even if we don't know them to be a Cyberpol agent. And it also makes me wonder how Robin and Brooke could fare against them, but I'll leave that discussion for a future video, so look out for that hopefully later this week. And now for Sanji. He simped so hard and he got so far, but in the end it didn't even matter because he may or may not have hit a girl. And now there seems to be a lot of debate over whether or not he did hit this girl. This is an area of doubt Oda has caused intentionally, and the fact we didn't see it and that Sanji seems to have blanked out when the girl's injury occurred gives Oda a great cover to plant reasonable doubt in the minds of both us as the readers as well as Sanji. So to go down the avenue that Sanji didn't hit this girl, which from a writer's standpoint makes a lot of sense, as numerous things could have happened in the time that Sanji blanked out, and something else may have happened to her. I could see Oda coming out with something like, she was hurt by an external force, but were it not for Sanji intervening at that exact moment, she would have been hurt even more, and I feel as though a lot of us are expecting something along those lines. However, on the other hand, I feel as though there's a lot to suggest that Sanji may have been directly responsible and may have actually attacked this girl. Up until this chapter, I've been pretty firm in my stance that Sanji will not be losing his feelings, empathy, emotions like his brothers did. But now through this chapter, Oda has managed to plant yet another seed of doubt in my mind, and Sanji temporarily losing his sense of self now seems like a very real possibility. And as many have pointed out, even his eyebrow is up to something. Yes, Sanji having attacked this girl would go against Sanji's code as a character, but we have to remember that if Sanji is indeed losing his emotions and becoming like his brothers, that would mean that he's losing his sense of self and isn't really in control. Of course, the Sanji that we know would never have hit this girl, and when he comes back to himself in this chapter and realizes what he may have done, he looks absolutely devastated, but there is reason to suggest that against his wishes, Sanji is turning into a person that we don't know, a person that he doesn't know, which must be, for one thing, absolutely terrifying for him to not be in control, but also just really devastating because despite everything he's been through, his past is still managing to catch up with him in such a way. And in this new potential emotionless state of his, when he blanked out, he may have actually lashed out at this girl like his brothers would have done. It's quite sad to think that his brothers have lived their full lives in this state, and that in the same way Sanji could have turned out like them, they also could have turned out like Sanji, but they didn't. Either way, he was not able to prevent this girl from harm, and either way we're going to be getting some very interesting character growth for him. I would also like to take this moment to congratulate One Piece for being the first ever piece of media to include a scene where a cyborg Brachiosaurus shows up outside a brothel and says, "It's closed, you dolt." Anyway, for the rest of the chapter, Sanji continues to do the absolute most. This panel of him saying, "Hey Luffy, which version of me do you want around?" was so heartbreaking in the best possible way, because Sanji, of course Luffy wants the true you, the kind you, the you he saw at Baratie and decided he wanted you as his cook before he'd even tried your cooking. Have you guys ever noticed that it wasn't Sanji's cooking, which is amazing, but his kindness when he offered the food to the starving Gin that made Luffy look over and say, "Yes, I want this guy in my crew." And this was before Luffy had even tried Sanji's cooking or seen him fight. The first thing that Luffy ever saw in Sanji that made him know that this was a special person, it wasn't his cooking, it wasn't his strength, but it was his kindness and his heart. And then after Whole Cake Island, when Judge is rattling off all the things about Sanji, which is mostly jabs about how he doesn't have a heart of stone and how he cares about those around him, Luffy says so genuinely, "Why is he listing all the good things about you?" Which is honestly so sweet and I love it. The very things that make Sanji Sanji are the reasons Judge sees him as a failure, but also the same reasons that Luffy, the crew, Zeff, Sora, and everyone else who's been a positive influence in Sanji's life love him. But so conditioned and so informed by the formative years of his life, the answer of course Luffy wants you as the true you, isn't as obvious to Sanji as it is for anyone outside looking in, and as a result we have this moment of real conflict within him. But then we see the best of Sanji winning out when he destroys the raid suit. He's doing the darnest to not be defined by the truth of his blood. And the best thing to do in such times of internal crisis, you phone a friend. Someone that you know know you can rely on. As I've mentioned in recent chapters, while their personalities genuinely clash, the absolute trust that Zoro and Sanji have in each other cannot be overstated. I also find it kind of cute that Sanji just slipped the Denden Mushi into Zoro's Haramaki for in case Zoro wandered off and got lost and got into trouble. Like, they really have each other's backs, and I can't say that enough. I just love the dynamic between these two. There is so much that can be said, but I might save that for a future video as well. I love these panels on the last page of them conversing. The way Zoro is taken aback by the request at first, but then obliges. They really admire each other's strength, and the "you better not die before then," loved that. But guys, does this mean that we are getting a Zoro versus Sanji? That is, if Sanji continues to lose himself, which might still happen. Oda has put it out there that we could be getting a Zoro versus Sanji. Now, there's two things that I could tell you about this potential Zoro versus Sanji. One, it's gonna hurt. Two, I want it so badly. What can I say? I'm a masochist. For a long time, I've kind of felt and wondered if we'd get some kind of proper Zoro versus Sanji in some capacity. Like, we did get Luffy versus Usopp after all, and I felt like the series was potentially gearing towards a Zoro versus Sanji in some kind of way. But the question was always, how would a genuine fight between Zoro and Sanji happen, since they're not enemies and they don't actually have a reason to fight outside of petty reasons. And I always found it odd that Zoro played no role in the Sanji arc, but all I needed to do was be patient, because Oda is seeing all of this through to the end. Now, of course, Zoro isn't gonna kill Sanji, but he may have to subdue him before getting totally wrecked himself, because even right now Zoro is still running on the medicine that the Minks have given him. I actually read this chapter with my sister, hey Rhiannon, and she suggested that maybe Sanji would be subdued by Zoro, and from there the only way to reverse the effects of his changing DNA and give him back his feelings and emotions while maintaining his new abilities would be to take him to an extremely adept scientist, and that's how we'll finally meet Vegapunk. I like that idea, and it does have quite a lot of merit since Vegapunk played a role in Sanji's genetics to begin with, but who knows what's gonna happen. I just really want a Zoro versus Sanji, and I want it to hurt good, but I'll save the rest of that for another video. To close, coming up on Sanji himself, this has been his strongest hell memories yet, since it seems to be fueled by his childhood, by his time with Germa, because as much as he doesn't want it to be so, Germa is still a part of Sanji. As Kaido said to Yamato a few chapters back, you can't escape the truth of your blood. We've seen glimpses of this a number of times in the arc as a whole, but while the truth of someone's blood can't be escaped, it also doesn't need to define them. And like how we saw Robin own and embrace the title Demon Child earlier in the raid, Sanji now needs to own and embrace the part of him that is Germa without losing himself in the process. There's no chapter next week, but Oda has totally earned this break. I just want to take a moment to thank you all for all of the follows, all of the likes, and all of the comments. Like, your comments can really make my day sometimes. Like the person who spelt Big Mom as Big Meme had me laughing all morning. But let me know what you think in the comments below, and be sure to leave a like. I'm Dawn of the World, and I will see you next time. Later, guys.